Wow, wow, what a super fast intro. First try, here we go. Okay, so I think our streaming service fully crapped out on us.
Oh, it works now.
It works now, we hope. Please let us know if it doesn't. It seems like it does though, so awesome. Let's just start from the top. I mean, the first time we've done this. Hello there, we've got a new face in front of the camera this time instead of behind. Steven.
Hello.
And then, of course, myself, Mateo. Yeah, excuse me if I'm a bit lower energy this stream. I just got my shot and yeah, it was not a fun 24 hours
No,
after.
I'm still recovering.
Yeah. But looks like we're back, which is awesome. Yeah, Steven, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Yeah, I'm Steven. I've been at the company for about a year and a half now. And last year I was doing a lot of engineering, hardware, and just figuring out what the 3DQ Quinly upgrades look like. And now I'm doing a Quinly lead. So I'm just making sure that we sort everything out for the Quinly kits and get them all to you and promote them nicely and everything like that. It's fun.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Mateo already, so
Yeah,
he doesn't
been
need much of an introduction.
People are sick of me already. And then behind the camera, we've got Dominic, who's also been with us for a while.
Hello.
Dominic says hi.
I do. I don't know how well you guys can hear me, but I've also been at 3DQ since the fall. I've been working in a bunch of different areas, a lot involved with the live streams lately.
Cool. So, yeah, today we'll be talking about, we've sort of distilled the top 10 things that we learned from running an automated print farm. So it's not often that people are running 50 Ender 3s in-house, so we wanted to take the lessons we learned basically over the last year. And I think what you guys will find interesting is running an automated print farm is actually quite different from running a traditional print farm. So there was a lot of trial and error, and there still is a lot of trial and error involved in figuring out the best way to run things. But
yeah, like we were the first people to do something like this with like an automated farm full of Enders. So
yeah,
you know, there's a lot of figuring things out for the first time.
Definitely.
You know.
And so hopefully we'll over the next hour and a bit we'll pass down all that wisdom to you guys. For those of you, since I know just talking with everyone, many of our customers pretty quickly after getting their first Quinly kit realized, oh, I have so much free time, why not get another printer?
Yes.
And so people have with the kit have slowly been building up their printers. So yeah, we just wanted to basically have a nice chat about like, here's a year's worth of trial and error that we've done and all the stuff we've learned and pass it on to you so that you guys don't have to experience the same thing we did.
Yeah.
So I guess just to reiterate, yeah, so our print farm in-house consisted of, well, we have a total of 50 Ender 3s and most of them are outfitted with Quinly. The print farm itself was completely automated, and what's really convenient about that is you don't need to spend your time constantly removing parts and managing printers and all of that stuff. But what it does mean is it does place a big emphasis on things like how do you set your printers up for success and how do you make sure that you get the most out of your now automated machines. So some of the big like upsides of running on Quinlys is there's no printer loitering. You can queue up parts in advance and obviously the parts are automatically removed, and then your reliability becomes very important. And because you're not worried about operators touching the machines all the time, your reliability actually goes up because there's less kind of manual interference.
Yeah, like 3D printers are actually super repeatable if you just let them do their own thing without messing with them.
As soon as you put a person into the equation, reliability can go way down.
Yeah, we're so random.
Yeah, people are pretty random. And then some of the downsides to not running on an automated system, because this is actually most print farms or pretty much all print farms are manually run with like a team of people, is that there are a lot of workarounds to the fact that you have to kind of sit around and wait for prints to finish. And one of those workarounds is batch printing. And so you'll see often in print farms, they'll try to fill the entire build plate and like set up a very particular cycle time. So like maybe once every 12 hours or whatever. And you're completely, the reason that's not great is that obviously with batch prints, a failure in a batch print wipes out way more than just one part, but you're also orienting your entire production schedule around the availability of operators. And for manufacturing, you don't want manufacturing, especially automated manufacturing, you don't want it to be so human-centric. And so there's a lot of time and workarounds being developed for manual printing that is entirely based on that requirement to have an operator there.
Yeah, like a lot of places they do like 3 to 8 hour shifts to just get 24 hours of coverage.
Yeah.
But that's no fun. I don't want to work
no
over the middle of the night, graveyard shift.
And it gets very expensive too. But you're right, it is like super mundane work. Like just imagine, because you're not on a, if you're working in a print farm, like a manual print farm, you always have to be ready for parts to be finished. It's not, printers are a little bit unpredictable. It's very difficult to schedule perfect cycles as well. So you're either gonna like compensate by just building in a bunch of downtime into your schedule, or have like a less predictable schedule, and then that means you need more operators to run it.
Yeah, and I've even heard of people like, if a print's gonna finish in like 5 minutes, but your shift is over, you're like, oh, I'll just wait another 5 minutes just to get this next print going, and it's, you know, it keeps on adding up.
That's how you end up at the print lab 2 hours after your shift is finished, trying to fix a printer or something. And we'll go into all that. And we'll also talk about like the costs associated with all these different things, and the way that an automated print farm, the way to look at like cost to run it versus a manual print farm as well. And one of the other things as well that having an automated farm that we've learned is it actually really, really frees you up to focus on throughput. Like right now with a manual print farm, if you have operators running it, operators are your main bottleneck to production. And so the typical solution to increase throughput is buy more printers and then hire more operators. And that doesn't scale well. And we'll as we go through all these top 10 points, we'll see like why it doesn't scale well and why automated printing scales differently and like better and better, I guess. Very on the nose, but yeah, pretty much why it scales better, because you don't have to scale up your workforce basically. What else should we mention? I mean, those are pretty much the key takeaways. It's like, what is the difference between running a manual print farm? Because when we first got the Enders, the farm was manual until we installed them all with
We actually have some fun
Quinlys.
pictures of what it used to look like.
Oh, okay, cool.
And we'll go through those.
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to have our printers just stacked on top of like cardboard boxes for a few weeks just once we were setting up.
Just before everything got set up, yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll go through all that. But the main takeaway, I guess, will be like why it's so much nicer to run an automated print farm compared to manual, and like what possibilities that opens up to you as the main operator. The main focus being you'll have way more free time to do other things and to work on your product as opposed to fixing broken printers. So if at any point you guys have any questions about anything we're saying, like feel free to post them in chat. We're on YouTube and Twitch, so just make an account and throw them in there. And we'll respond like right away. We're watching chat the whole time. And then what else should? Oh, I guess one big thing, which we'll get back to at the end, is something that would have been nice for us in the beginning would have been to have a community of people to refer back to when we were trying to set up the automated print farm.
Yeah.
but that didn't exist at the time. So we've created a Discord server where everyone with Quinlys kind of hangs out and can help each other troubleshoot and give each other tips, but also all of our staff are in there too. So if you have any questions like that.
Yeah, we'll give you personalized advice. And some of the guys on Discord are actually pretty good at, the Quinlys too, now that they've got their setup. So
yeah.
Just customers will be able to help you too. Shout out to Jack.
Yeah, shout out to Jack.
He's on the stream right now.
He's on the stream.
He's always on the stream.
He's ready to help. Yeah, I guess I'll start with from the very beginning, because years ago I started with one printer, and then I can go through the journey, what it was starting with one printer and then now having the automated print farm in-house. So I guess I got my first printer in when I was in high school, and it was a Rostock Max V2, and it was just because I thought, 3D printing, I saw it once in person, and I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. I was doing a lot of 3D part design just for fun, and modeling certain things, but the ability to actually produce those really appealed to me. So I got my printer for that reason, so I could work on my own projects. And one printer for that was sufficient. It was getting pretty, infrequent use. I would put on a part in the evening, and probably by the time I went to bed, it was done, and I'd be able to, mess around with it the next day or whatever. And that was fine for a while. So that was just a Rostock Max manual machine. That didn't last very long though, because as soon as word got out that I had access to a 3D printer, I started getting so many requests from friends and people I knew, and then friends and friends' parents, and then colleagues of friends' parents to do 3D printing for them.
Oh yeah.
And I found myself in a situation that I think a lot of people experience, especially,
I felt the same. Happened to me when I got my first printer
pretty
too.
much everyone here that works here, and even some of the Etsy stores we've talked to on previous streams, when we interviewed them, everyone, a lot of people in 3D printing running print farms have this issue of having way too much demand to the amount of printers that they have. And so that was when I slowly started realizing, so I was going through all these orders that I was getting, and it was taking me a really long time to process them. And part of what I realized is that I don't have 24/7 to be able to sit next to my 3D printer, and I was losing more time than I was printing, just due to the fact that when the part finished, the printer would sit idle while I was sleeping or while I was at school. And for a time, just to be able to get through all these orders, I was actually basically basing my entire schedule around making sure to get prints on, and it was not a very nice life, I would say, for
I
a few
remember
months.
doing something similar where I'd be running late for work, but I wanted to get a print going because there was 8 hours of my time that I needed to have print going. So it's just adds stress to your life.
Yeah, it definitely did. And then you would also kind of dread having a big project with a lot of prints, because it would it's going to consume the next 3 weeks if you want to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. So I started looking at okay, well, all of these bottlenecks, the printer is good at printing, but it needs me to intervene so often just so that it can keep printing. So I realized the bottleneck for running this one machine was me, the operator, and my availability. And then I started looking at, well, the first thing to automate would be the part clearing and the part restarting, because that was really, once my machine was calibrated, that was the only thing I was doing.
Yeah, you don't need to level your bed after every print.
Yeah,
once
exactly.
the machine's getting good.
Yeah, so that was kind of the first iteration of Quinly. First it was a glass bed, and then I started, eventually developing things and developed it into a vapor bed. The glass bed actually was interesting. It was good as a proof of concept, but it's not nearly consistent enough, and the adhesion was really poor. So as soon as I tried to do any sort of variation in the type of parts, it just wouldn't work. And so that eventually, through basically years of experimenting and finding and researching different materials, eventually the vapor bed was developed, which has consistent performance with big parts, small parts. You can run a small part right before a big part and it won't matter at all. And so that was, once I nailed down the consistency for the part release, like the rest of the automated suite of features just kind of grew from there. And then a couple years later, did the development. Eventually 3DQ was founded. And then last year was due to COVID. So 3DQ used to sell a product called the Q-Pod, which was an aluminum frame that had 9 modified Ender 3s sat in it sideways.
Yeah, we'll be showing pictures of this.
Oh, do we have photos?
We do, yeah. It's in...
Where could I show those?
It should be in the slideshow, actually.
Are you looking
We can show those during the stream as well. We'll be...
Okay, we'll show them in a bit.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing we sold, but we had to go and physically install those. So with COVID, we realized, well, there's no physical, you can't physically install anything.
Yeah.
So we started setting up manufacturing in-house. So we built 5 of those. No, we had 1 built.
Yeah, we had to take it down and then put it back.
Yeah, and then we built 4 additional ones. So that was a total of 45 printers. And we started, basically building up the manufacturing in-house so that we could, run as a print farm for a while, produce PPE for COVID, and then, but it was all actually, the flip side to it was to actually be able to on-site learn and understand how a print farm might be using the automated technology and like seeing what things we should be improving and what things we're running into. Because it's always better to gather internal feedback than it is to give it to a client and like have them give you a lot of feedback and improvements to do. So
yeah, we got a lot of stats out of that.
Yeah, we did a whole bunch of, well, I guess since we set it up, we've printed tens of thousands of parts just on the machine. So we have been running it, like we have a lot of data basically. More than we'd be getting just installing a couple units here and there every so often. And then in October, because COVID obviously wasn't letting up, we decided to break down the Q-Pod into single unit machines, which is now the Quinly product. And so that was launched in November. And that gives you a lot of different data, which is also very interesting. So our internal manufacturing, we had many, many printers, and we were looking at it as like use in a farm. But with the Quinlys, we had individual printers being deployed in many different locations and under many different environments. And then that in itself was a completely like different set of data in regards to like environmental conditions.
And also how people use it differently.
Yeah,
and
the
kinds of
use
parts
cases.
Some people just print tons of small parts, tons of big parts. Like it's good to see how it performs different materials too. Yeah, definitely. It reaches like a far wider range of use cases than we ever could have just running the machines internally. So it was actually really nice for development, just being able to like have this. So like we spent internally, testing and developing the consistency and the reliability, but then now that it's kind of spread out around over like hundreds of use cases and different users, seeing how our tech gets like stands up to that type of test, and then using that to further develop Quinly has been really interesting. But yeah, so I guess. And now we actually use our internal machines to print parts for the Quinly, so we still use them as a print farm. Quinlys are printed on Quinlys.
Yeah, yeah, and the DIY is like, getting your first DIY will be slow, but getting your second one, you just queue up all the parts and print them again, so it should be pretty cool. Yeah, for those of you who do have one, because I know a bunch of the DIY kits that we shipped last week or 2 weeks ago should be arriving by now. So
It
it'd
was
be
last week.
yeah. I'd love to know
Within a
what
few days.
you guys are printing on yours. Like just adding to the amount of use cases that we've been seeing, because it is super handy information. I think yeah, the next step for a lot of people now is building this, like they've got one automated machine and you can run like production on it, but building it into a full-fledged print farm, there's quite a bit of things to consider. So I guess we'll have basically 10 segments, right?
Yep.
And we'll be, in each one, we'll sort of be talking, we'll have 10 points, 10 of the most important things that we learned, like from going from 1 Quinly to 50, and things you should consider if you're going to be setting up a print farm. Yeah, because it is actually, I would say it makes it a lot easier to run than, definitely than manual printers, but you have to think about it a little bit differently. Yeah, so why don't we dive in to this first point. Ooh, transition.
Whoa.
Wow, fancy. This first point is optimize one printer. So what do we mean by that?
Well, if you want to build a farm of really good printers, you want to have one really good printer to base the whole farm off of. So whether it's your first printer or your second printer, you just want to get one printer that works really well. And so that means you need to know like what upgrades you want to do to it and what materials you want to print on it. And if you want to plan a little bit into the future, just having a really reliable, robust first printer on your farm is just going to save you so many headaches along the way.
Mm-hmm. And what we mean by that is like understand, like have one printer that you build that is basically best suited for your particular use case. And what Steven's saying about different materials impact things like what kind of hot end do you want on that printer. The Quinly upgrade, for example, is an example of an upgrade that you want to try on one printer first, and then once you understand how it works, replicate it very quickly onto the rest of your machines.
Yeah. Or do you want like a direct drive for flexible
Yeah.
potential? There's
that's a good one as well. So knowing like testing new hardware, especially with Quinly, because when you, I guess one thing to keep in mind is, and we'll be repeating this over and over again, an automated system, any sort of improvements you make to an automated system are multiplied vastly compared to a manual system, because every improvement you make that saves you a minute is now saving you a minute every cycle, 24/7, 365, right?
Yeah, it gets multiplied by the uptime of the printer.
Yeah. Whereas before, like, if something was at a minute, but really the printer's still entirely reliant on you, like for manual printing, that 1 or 2 minutes might not be very consequential. So
yeah, like the bottleneck is actually the print time itself, not the operator.
Yeah. And so, basically what we're saying is you don't want to have a workaround that you deploy to your entire print farm. You want to test different workarounds for something on on a single machine, find the best one, and then once you've proven out that solution, then deploy it to the rest of your farm. So I guess a good example of this would be on our print farms, we've actually replaced all of the stock hot ends with V6 type hot ends. And one of the reasons was that the Creality hot ends just tend to fail and clog much more frequently. But that's not how we started. We started with 50 Ender 3s with stock hot ends, and we learned the hard way that after a couple weeks in, we were getting massive amounts of clogs, and dealing with clogs on 50 printers as opposed to one printer is a massive pain, because then we had to slowly go through and convert the entire farm. And part of that was just we didn't know that we had deployed this solution of the stock hot end to the entire farm without thoroughly testing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, a 24/7 printing environment is a very different beast compared to regular printing, because your hot end is going to be hot like all the time, right? And
Yeah, and you're not going to be checking on it all the time. You
Yeah.
know, if my printer at home, I just see it every time I pass by. But you know, in a farm like this, you just have to assume that everything's working really good. And if it isn't, you need to fix it.
yeah, so don't do the same thing we did.
Yeah.
Don't make assumptions that will apply to your entire print farm when you're doing an upgrade. Definitely test on one machine, get it right, and then start deploying it everywhere. And again, the automation just multiplies that like by like, well, it depends on particular use case, but it could be like a 5-fold increase. We're going to be using kind of a very simple metric, I guess, throughout these examples where like, and these are just round numbers so that you guys can get a sense of what we're talking about. But we'll assume like on a printer, 1 hour of printing for business will produce like $10 in revenue. So any sort of uptime, especially in an automated environment, like loss of uptime means loss of that revenue,
Yeah.
right?
If you're down for 2 hours, you just lost $20.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be using that kind of as a reference. So what we're kind of suggesting and what we tend to implement now is that for upgrades, like for hardware upgrades, we try to test for at least 2 weeks on a single printer. The 1,000 hours dies test is kind of an example of like, we're not putting dies, hot ends on every single printer that we have. We're going to be testing it on this one and trying to understand like the failure rates and just on one printer, because repairing one printer is also much more manageable. The other thing is like, if this is something like an ancillary upgrade to the rest of your print farm, it would be a bad idea to just dive in head first, replacing all the hot ends, because now your print farm, which may have been working quite well before, will have unpredictable downtime. And
Yeah.
fixing failures is still operator dependent. So now you're taking your automated system and reverting it to an operator dependent schedule, and that can be quite bad. So that's why we're
Yeah.
stressing the importance of testing any sort of upgrades before they get put on.
Yeah, and with every upgrade, there's like a learning curve, and it's so much easier if you get to 90% knowledge with just one printer than starting at like 10% knowledge with all your printers and then having to learn how to use your upgrade
Mm-hmm.
after applying it to all your printers.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
So I guess where most people will start, if they don't have Quinly yet, they will have an Ender 3 that's been working for them pretty well, and they've been able to do prints on it. And now the first step would be, okay, if you want to really expand this to a farm, we would recommend get a Quinly on that first Ender 3 that's been working for you. And we've designed the product in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the rest of your hardware upgrades. So if it was working well before, it should still be working well with Quinly. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure that's the case. And just test it. And what 24/7 printing will really quickly reveal is if in the hardware that you had before, maybe there are some parts of it that are not suited for 24/7 printing. For example, the Creality hot ends, where it's our example of that, where we found, okay, these are decent hot ends for infrequent use, but on 24/7 printing, they were too unreliable.
It's also why we got auto leveling on all of our printers too.
Yes.
Turns out manually leveling a bed will keep it consistent if you're the only printer you have and you're using it every once in a while, but auto leveling just makes life so much easier.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things that you realize once Quinly removed the operator from the equation, you quickly realize that that operator was manually leveling the bed every single time they went to reset it. So now you have to have a solution. Okay, well, how do we get bed leveling out of the equation as well? How do we automate that? Because then you really don't have any sort of operator reliability.
Yeah, and it's nice now. A lot of Ender 3s come with like, or there are BL Touch kits that just like pop right onto Ender 3s now.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to work with all these ABL probes and things like that.
Yeah, but instantly, like, yeah,
it just makes it so much nicer to work with in general.
Yeah, but and that's like an instant example of something we noticed right away switching to automation. It's like, oh yeah, I was leveling the bed every single time, and now that's the main bottleneck to me running my print farm, and the hardware on the machine is actually not ready for automation. So that's the kind of things that will be revealed during that one printer test. Because you could do like a print and be like, oh, that's probably okay, but like if you're in the mindset of production, like that's not very acceptable, right?
Yeah.
Then
doesn't tell you a whole lot.
Yeah, you propagate it, and then your entire print farm starts failing for a very weird reason. Another example of something that we ran into very early on when we just had 9 printers was when we switched to hot ends, we switched to E3D V6 hot ends, and I had one of those on my row stock for years and had no issues. But what we did notice was when we installed them on the automated printers, I guess they were so constantly moving so much that within a week or so, like every single thermistor wire completely broke.
They're just dropping like flies.
Yeah.
Once every few hours, we just had this small period of time where they just all failed. It
Yeah,
was really
all
weird.
failed like within the same couple of days, and we like verified that everything, all the strain relief was correct. Like we even verified with them, like all the strain relief was correct.
Yeah, we sent emails and stuff. It was
Yeah,
great.
it was kind of, it was definitely interesting. Just like the whole thing broke down because I had made this assumption that, oh, well, on my one printer, it worked fine with no problems. So the product should work fine with no problems instantly, but we didn't test it on a single Quinly for 2 weeks. If we had done that, then we probably would have found out quite early on, okay, this thermistor wire is not capable of being operated like 24/7. Yeah, and that took our entire farm down basically, which was like...
Yeah, it was like 9 printers, it's about like 8 to 10 hours of, actually no, it was more like, we had to order new thermistors for a lot of these.
Yeah.
So it was like about a week maybe of downtime.
Yeah.
Over 9 printers.
We had spare
9 times
parts.
24 times 7.
Yeah, it's a lot of lost revenue basically because of this one small component that took down the entire print farm.
Yeah. Now we have like 50 replacement thermistors just in case.
Just in case, but ever since we switched to a new type, which we validated, we very, very rarely get thermistor failures.
Yeah.
I can only think of 2 since since like last fall, basically.
Yeah,
that I've replaced. I know production's probably replaced more than that.
Yeah, I think the only reason I've replaced the thermistor is like if a hot end just gets gunked up with plastic and you're trying to rip it off, sometimes you get a wire. And that's happened before to me once, but
yeah.
You know, it's not like we're doing that all the time anymore. It's very reliable.
Yeah. So basically what we're saying with this one, test on one printer, make sure that your printer meets your use case and can run it for at least 2 weeks before you start expanding it to other printers and before you start growing your farm. As exciting as it is, and I know like I naturally tend to just want to put it on everything. As exciting as it is to run like a ton of automated machines, you want to make sure that your hardware is ready to do that. And I mean, the Ender 3 is a really great base printer. A lot of it doesn't have to be changed.
They just love us drinking water, apparently.
Yeah, I know.
We're just... Actually, we should just stop talking about drinking.
We should
Let's just drink water.
Drink water. Well, for every
hydration stream.
For every like, we'll drink water one time.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's a good.
That's how we'll do it.
If you don't like the video, they will.
We'll dehydrate by the end of the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will cry our water back into the into the water bottles.
Okay. Yeah, so bottom line, test things, make sure your hardware is ready. The Ender 3 is a great base, but different printers make different good bases. Like for example, in some cases, Prusa might be a better base for your print farm because it comes with a V-stick style hot end, and it comes with an inductive probe, and maybe soon it might even have an automation kit for it, but we'll just move on to the next point now.
Actually, we got a question in chat about Eric Woolridge. Justin 3D was asking if you've ever talked with him, Mateo.
Justin 3D, we've sent him a kit. We've been talking to him for many months now, and I think we actually have done 2 interviews and streams with him, 2, maybe even 3.
Yeah, they're on the YouTube channel.
On this YouTube channel. So if you want to hear us talk with Eric about automated 3D printing and 3D printing for production, like obviously, like he's an amazing expert on 3D printing and just has a ton of knowledge about manufacturing in general. On this channel, we have a couple videos with him. Yeah, so we do speak to him. He does a lot of testing for us. We work pretty collaboratively with him. Yeah. Okay. Number 2 point. Transitioned again.
Fancy.
Number 2 is invest in reliability and time savings. So it's this mindset of cost versus investment. It will cost a lot to put LEDs on every single 3D printer. But if the LEDs help you like monitor your prints in a dark room, then it's more of an investment, right? Like it saves you time.
Like investments have an upside,
yeah,
and tend to like produce value over time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas costs, well, go ahead.
They don't.
Yeah,
they're just expenses. So like, so what we mean by that is like, if you, let's say you decide to stay on some like weird bad hot end because it's cheaper. Over time, you're going to have to be maintaining the hot end very, very frequently in an automated situation. And whenever it breaks down, it's going to cost you money because your printer is now sitting idle, losing like potentially $10 an hour that it could be like, you know, being productive and producing prints with. So if you have like a really crappy hot end that's breaking down on you, even just once a week, right? Let's say it breaks down once a week.
Yeah, just a small like routine maintenance job needed once a week. That's not good.
Yeah, you wouldn't think, oh, that's pretty infrequent. Like even normal scales, that's pretty infrequent. But if you think about it, like okay, you're producing, your printer's making you $10 an hour over the course of a week, and then let's say it fails some point in the middle of the night. Well, now your printer is not running all night, which is any sort of revenue over those hours. Let's say 6 to 8 hours, $60 to $80 just in lost revenue. But then you have to go make time out of your day to go and fix that hot end and replace it, and then that could take another couple hours. Most people don't really count their time as having value, but when you do have to factor that into the cost of your parts. And so that's an additional cost. And then of course, getting it back up and running, you have to recalibrate it. That's still downtime. And yeah, you might say, oh, well, it's only once a week, but like, there is a pretty high like cost associated with it. It could end up being like about $100 because there's the opportunity cost of not printing during that time. Then there's your time. Then there's like more indirect costs of like, okay, what do you have to make free in your schedule to be able to go maintain this printer that you don't know when it will fail? Like either you allow your printer to sit idle until you're free, or you have to change up your schedule so that you can go and fix a printer. And like that is
It'd be like making
pretty
sacrifices
expensive.
in your life just to keep your little 3D printer going.
Yeah. So like a downtime of even half a day costs you over $100, and then consider that maybe spending an extra $100 on a hot end in the first place might reduce your failure rate from once a week to once a month or once every couple of months. You basically within a week or so you've paid off that initial investment. Like it brings you value in that you have more uptime to produce parts. It's requiring less of your time, and one of the best things about it requiring less of your time means that you can spend more time getting more printers going, right? Like running more printers on the side.
You're the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
So if your printers are taking up your time, then you're the only thing that will grow the print farm bigger.
Yeah.
So it's
Until we figure out how to get printers to self-replicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to learn how to get 3D printers printing circuit boards and stepper motors and stuff.
And self-assembling.
Yeah.
But until then, your time is always going to be the bottleneck. And while automated printing makes sure minimizes your time in terms of production, and we've built the vapor bed to be extremely reliable. Like you'll never really have to purchase a second one unless it gets physically damaged. You have to look at the other components on your printer and kind of evaluate, okay, how much would I rather save now versus how much time and how much cost is it going to bring me every time I have to repair this printer. So that all being said, like in some cases, if you're printing like high stakes and you don't want reliability, that's why you don't want reliability issues. That's why you see people investing like hundreds or thousands of dollars into more reliable base 3D printers, which have better reliability in their hot ends and in their motors and in their electronics. Yeah. So
there's a lot of cheap options out there too. It's like tempting just to buy the cheapest one.
Yeah.
See how it is. Happened to me a few times is I just buy the cheapest one to be like, oh, let's see if it's any good. And then I just end up using it for a few months and forget that there's better options out there.
Yeah.
So.
And then it like fails catastrophically and actually ends up costing you like probably more than the solution would have.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah. Now I just look at reviews. Reviews are really good for determining which one's the best. Watch a lot of YouTube to see, what people think about the product. That's how I base most of my decisions now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, it is super important. You'll pretty much in 3D printing, most of the time you get what you pay for. And yeah, it's cheaper to buy 10 hot ends, like 10 nozzles from AliExpress than it might be to buy one that was machined, in the US. But if those nozzles are breaking down even, twice as often, they're still going to end up costing you far more, because as soon as you're tinkering with the machine for an hour, like assuming, you make about $20 an hour, like that's already $20 lost plus the production time loss.
Yeah.
It would be yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any examples of like when an entire like just portion of your printer failed and prevented you from working on it for a few weeks? I know Jack has like 30 broken printers at his house. So
maybe a couple working ones.
He would be a good example.
Someone's asking in chat right now about if our inductive probe, or if the Prusa inductive probe will work through our vapor bed.
Yeah, it does. It does. Don't ask me how I know, but I've tested it.
Top secret.
Ooh, top secret. Yeah. No, it does work. Confirmed to be working. The Pinda probe actually has a pretty good distance, so it is able to. The vapor beds are only 1 millimeter in thickness. Okay.
Yeah. Also, there's one thing I want to say is that even just like the tiniest things like screws, buying nice screws is actually super important. Because if you've ever tried unscrewing like a little thing on the hot end with the tiniest little M2 wrench and the thing strips, then you have a useless hot end with like a stuck screw,
Yeah.
and just spending like 10 cents more on your screw
Like saves you hours.
is
Like,
so important.
yeah, it's literally like even down to looking at screws, and then yeah, like I said, we'll keep saying this, but on an automated print farm, any downtime is potentially money lost, because these should be running 24/7.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our next point, third point, and I think, well, everyone here is actually already following this, but the next point is get involved with the community.
Yeah.
That is like,
Hey guys, we're the community. Get involved with us.
I mean, yeah, everyone in chat is talking with one another. We've got our Discord for automated printing, but just in general, like the 3D printing community, like I wouldn't know anything about 3D printing without going through, RepRap forums and spending hours and hours on the RepRap IRC when that was a thing, and now everyone's moved over to Discord. But there are crazy people out there who will spend 100 hours running tests on particular components so that you don't have to. And I mean, this stream is part of that. We ran an automated print farm for a year, and now we're sharing our tips so that you don't have to learn from scratch. But the whole point of getting involved with the community is that, share the knowledge and learn from others, because I guarantee you other people have struggled with the same problems that you have.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
That's how we all get good, is by sharing knowledge with each other. And if we just keep it secret, then there's no point.
Yeah. So I guess it's an opportune time to plug the Discord, but because not that many people are running automated printers, we've created a Discord, which is in the channel or in the video description, where everyone with Quinlys or people just interested in automated printing hang out. And yeah, like I see people all the time, I mean, including ourselves, but just helping everyone get going with the automation, because it is a bit of like a shift in thinking for sure.
Yeah. It's a good place also, like we do competitions now every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's good to show off what you do, and if you do a really cool print, you'll share it, and people...
If you have a really cool failure,
that's true too.
That gets shared as well pretty often.
I love failures.
Yeah, failures are great.
Yeah, especially automated one.
Yeah.
Because then you make a lot of failures, which is cool.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of successes, like people, printing hundreds of parts at a time.
Yeah.
Is super awesome to see, and learning, like, because everyone right now in the Discord is set up with Quinlys on Ender 3s, so everyone's got the same kind of base printer to share their experience from.
Yeah, I mean, even small successes too, like getting a single print out of a easy 3'd. I mean,
yeah, that's
impressive.
That's a small success, physically small success. But there are like things that you'll learn that other people have experienced. I guess another thing in our case, going back to what we learned from the print farm, was we were running with the stock extruders, because again, we had been printing with Ender 3s, and we assume, the stock extruder is fine. We haven't had any problems with it.
Yeah.
But what we found was with the automated printing, just running and not paying attention, like not paying attention, but not having to monitor constantly the performance of the machine. Because with Quinly, we noticed that not that long after we got set up, maybe a couple months, the filament was actually wearing through the extruder and cutting the extruder.
Oh yeah.
That was one thing. And the brass gear, this is a known thing, but the brass gears were developing grooves really quickly after a certain point.
They were all kind of doing it at the same time as well, which is interesting.
And that's another case of like where this small assumption can take down your entire print farm, because all of these parts had a very similar expectancy, like failure expectancy, but it was only accelerated by running 24/7.
Yeah.
Do you want to check out the contest channel on the Discord and actually
Oh, is there?
see some of the failures?
Okay,
Oh, that
sure.
could be fun. Yeah.
It should be the next scene, but you might want to add you guys' own video in there.
Sure. Yeah. I'll share the screen with everyone. What contest do we? Oh, from last week, right?
Yeah. There should be the next scene. Like the next scene should already.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Like that was one of the things that we learned and that we frequently pass on is like replace the extruder gear because your extruder is literally the filament is going to chop it in half over time. Okay, here we go. Like, here's some of the things that you can expect to learn from the Discord. It's like pretty funny, honestly. We were doing a challenge last week of who could get this part to print the fastest and the most beautiful. And then this was one of the, I think, most interesting fails I've ever seen. We do have quite a few more though. But look at, somehow the bottom of the print came detached, but the adhesion to the vapor bed was strong enough to maintain the position for the rest of the print.
Yeah, shout out to Flipsaw for this one.
Yeah.
This was such a cool fail.
Yeah, that one was bizarre.
And I think he won most spectacular fail from that too. So
yes,
congratulations.
He definitely did. And then we also had Dominic's, but I don't know where it was posted.
Oh, it's still up there actually.
It was on Instagram, I think, though.
Oh, here it is. Oh, it's hidden now. It's off your story. Damn.
Okay,
too old.
I can resend it.
It's okay. Yeah, you can send it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, people tagging me, a lot of Jack tagging me with questions all day long that I try to answer.
Yeah, you can see the Flex channel too, see what people post on there.
Oh yeah, people showing off. Steven just put a triple IDEX on the CR10.
That was fun.
That was, very cool. And then people just doing test prints.
Some good gifts too.
Oh yes, this happened to me too, actually, one time.
The old bed leveling screws.
Yeah, you just print for so long that the screws literally fall off the bottom of your bed.
Yeah, things you didn't know about automated printing.
Yeah, you wouldn't have. That is a very unpredictable failure that definitely happened. That I should probably warn more people about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was unexpected. I saw one day. Luckily with the ABL, it didn't cause complete downtime, but I learned one day, I noticed one day all my prints had a crazy elephant's foot on one corner. And then I looked and this isn't mine, but the exact same thing happened where I found that one of the wheels had completely come off the bed just due to the vibrations. And if I were running a manual ender, I'd actually, always be leveling the bed and checking. I would have noticed that earlier, so that was something I had to fix.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. In our print farm, our old print farm, we had locking nuts on every single bed so that they wouldn't go out of level.
Yeah.
And that was another upgrade that we shifted over to 50 different printers, which took a long time. So keep that in mind. That is,
yeah. Fixing that on all 50 printers actually took over a day worth of work, which is very expensive.
It was 8 hours of person time.
Yeah.
Not just we did it in a day. It was.
And your printers are all down.
2 weeks, I think, of actual maintenance.
Yeah.
Doing a little bit each time.
Yeah. So at that $10 an hour, we were just in printing productivity loss. We were losing about $500 an hour worth of productivity, and then in addition to the costs associated with, having people fix all those printers, right? Just to give a reference of how such a tiny failure can affect, if it's on your entire farm, how much it could cost.
We got a question from Kevin Schaefer about what do we think about the little rubber
the silicone ones?
Silicone things instead of springs for bed leveling.
I've never tested those, but I know stiff springs seem to be the way to go. But I think those silicone ones are basically equivalent to stiff springs.
Yeah, I think so. They're they keep a very it's easy to know when you've got them all about the same, because they're all the same height and they don't really have that springiness to them. It's more like a squish.
Mm-hmm.
So they get probably quite difficult to tighten very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think they probably would be good to do some tests with. We just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep moving. Oh, I thought you said pog. Okay, let's switch here. What do we have on screen here?
It should be the sharing for the Google Drive. I don't know if it worked or not.
Oh, it's not working.
Yeah, it's not working.
It's showing some text. Oh, this is actually.
Wait, what are we looking
No, that should
at?
be it, right? Yeah. Okay, it's working.
What are we showing here?
We have a gallery open right now.
Okay.
Yeah, you should just start at the top or the bottom, whichever one looks like it.
We see a face shield.
Is that the correct thing?
Let's see what the setting.
Well, I'll start talking about it and then we can find the right photo.
Yeah.
So the fourth point,
Should be the polypropylene photo.
the polypropylene photo. Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of our fourth thing is that we had like a major issue with, and that you'll start to only notice once your print farm gets about, 5 printers or so, is climate control. And here is a good example of something that can happen with bad climate control. But originally when we had built the 5Q pods, so 5 times 9 printers, they were basically out in the open in this like semi-warehouse space. It was high ceiling, non-insulated. And we had built it in May, and that summer quickly started to get really, really hot. And so what we noticed was, that was one of the problems. One of the problems was ambient temperature. The other problem was that the printers themselves generate a lot of heat when they're printing. And then we were noticing, because it was a warehouse that was shared with a woodworking studio, there's a lot of dust in the air as well, which is like not ideal.
Yeah, we went into it thinking, oh, we're going to a wood shop. There's going to be no issues with this. This is fine.
That shouldn't be too big of a deal. We had like it pretty enclosed, but
yeah, but no, it was actually a problem.
it was a pretty big problem. But yeah, like climate control in a farm is very important. And yeah, running in a wood shop is not a great idea, which we learned. So if there's anything to take away from there, do not run your printers in an extremely dusty environment. But like more generally, what we ended up doing was, because it was an uninsulated warehouse, the temperature fluctuations would be really, really drastic during the summer. So during the day, it almost get up to it was like 28 or 30 degrees in there. That's during the hottest times. And because the printers the automation relies on temperature to cycle, our cycle time, because it was hot, it took longer to cool down.
Yeah,
So
we actually had printers just idle for hours because it would never reach the cool down temperature.
It would be too hot for the parts to release.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, during the day, and then during the night you would see they would cycle a lot faster because it got really, really cold. And it wasn't just an issue for the automation, but the ambient temperature affects how the parts come out as well. It affected the part quality itself. And you would notice differences, or you'd notice failures happening more often at certain part of the day as well, just because when the ambient's really hot, your cooling fan is not as effective as when it's really cold. And when it's really cold, your parts are more prone to warping than when it's really hot. So we were running a production system, and we were trying to get repeatable results, but because the ambient temperature was so uncontrolled, your whole, like, everything would just change throughout the day in very unpredictable ways, and that would cause a lot of failures and a lot of downtime as well.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this was during the summer.
Yeah.
And there's like the opposite thing that can happen during the winter is that when your ambient temperature is too cold, then parts don't stick properly or they release at weird times, and you can get weird issues going on. And I know some people, the most common place for the printer is in the basement. Unless it's got like good air conditioning and heating, it's actually not a good place for a print farm, because those basements will get really cold at night, and then your parts will be doing weird things.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah, but even during the summer, like if your basement is not well ventilated, or any time of the year, your printers are going to be generating heat down there, so you need a way to get the heat out as well. So that's actually, I would say as soon as you cross over like 5 printers, that's something to seriously start looking at, because again, with an automated system, even the time that you're not around is now becomes very valuable, because the printer has the potential to run 24/7. So with a manual printer, you'll be like, you might say, oh well, printing overnight when it's really cold is not really a problem because I'm not around, or starting a print in the middle of the day while I'm at work, so that'll never happen. But with an automated system, now those times become open to you, and now you have to consider the environmental factors of running at those times. I was recently speaking to Jeremy, one of our customers, and he over the weekend tried moving his printers downstairs.
Oh yeah.
And just because of the change of ambient temperature, his G code like wouldn't work properly anymore. The parts would not come out well, and he was having all sorts of issues. So like even a small kind of inconsequential change like that can shut you down for a long time and cost you a lot of time. So I would ambient temperature control is a big one. What we ended up doing was building a box, like a small room in that warehouse, and sticking an air conditioner on the side of it.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of, to isolate the printers. It was insulated from the rest of the warehouse. And then the AC would keep that room at a constant, I think we had it at 19 degrees.
Yeah, just below room temperature.
Yeah.
And we called it the freezer.
The freezer. Even though it was like...
It was just a comfortable temperature.
It was a comfortable temperature.
We actually have some old pictures of that. Might be good to show. They're actually in the live stream channel on our Discord.
It's also, I sent it directly to your Discord.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, let me pull those up.
It's in the DM. Oh yeah, we have some videos of it. That's cool.
Oh yeah, okay. So I've got video of what do I have video of?
So this is
the old setup. Oh, here I
yeah,
got
this
it.
is before we actually put the freezer in.
This is it.
This is like a blast from the 3DQ past.
Yeah, so here was before the freezer, and then this entire corner would end up becoming... Wow, was this filmed with like...
This is filmed with my phone back before I got it.
This is filmed with a potato. Holy.
They can't tell, it's very small.
Yeah, so this was like when we had just gotten the Enders. Most of them don't even have beds adhered to them yet. And this entire corner ended up becoming enclosed with the insulation. And this was actually before we built the Q-Pod, so this was last May. So this was basically going from the 9 printer setup to now starting to build and test, starting to build and test the other 40.
Yeah, like this is actually probably just over a year ago.
Yes, this is just over a year ago. And then here is another video. Okay, so this is before we built the enclosed room, but these are the 4 Q pods that we built out here, and then we had one in a different room. And so this would already improve, but we noticed things like the printer's relative location and stuff would affect them. And it was still open to the warehouse ambient temperature changes. So you can actually see on one of them, we started putting doors on the front just to try and help keep heat in. There's one earlier that had a door. Oh yeah, in the top left.
The prototype door.
The prototype door.
There's some other good pictures actually of the full freezer with all of them having doors on them.
Oh yeah, in the live stream channel?
Quite aesthetic, yeah.
Okay, I'll go there. Everyone can see my DMs.
Yeah, just scroll up probably.
Oh, here it is. Okay.
Yeah, there's some good stuff here.
So
we got
this was also one of the rooms that we were testing in. Hold on, I would just want to make sure it's showing up right on stream. Yeah.
Close enough.
This was very, very early on. So this was before we would move them to the warehouse. And we actually didn't have enough space in the warehouse. So we were putting stuff on the Ender boxes themselves. You can see on the left, the tables were just 2 Ender boxes stacked one on another. What else do I have here? And then this was in the freezer, the Q pods, so the arrangement of 9 sideways printers. This was pre-Quinly. They all had doors now, so that would prevent, the doors would prevent, in the case of the freezer, would prevent like a direct draft from the AC hitting one of the printers.
Yeah.
So that's why they were on there. And they were also to just help with dust, because yeah, the wood shop was extremely dusty. Cool printer picture in the dark of all the screens.
Lights out production.
That's true, lights out production, that's what that is. Here's another picture. We ended up orienting them a lot differently as well to fit within that tiny room that we had.
Yeah, it was like a T shape. A bunch of parts.
Bunch of parts. Yeah, and we'll come back to this photo as well.
Yeah.
What else do we have? Oh, we printed a Cybertruck.
Nice. Yeah.
I guess that was right around the time it was announced.
Yeah, actually Essen got this.
Yeah.
He took it home with him.
It's a low poly truck already.
A low poly truck, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so this was like really early days. So this was our production setup at the old office. And actually at our new office, which we just moved to last month, we're taking this and we've set the Q-pods up much differently now. They're basically like Quinlys on shelves, just
Quinly pods.
Quinly pods, I guess. But they're not like, the printers are no longer integrated into the aluminum frame because, again, it's like part of the learning process, but we learned it's actually very difficult to do maintenance on the machines like this. So now we have them all set up on a shelf that's built out of aluminum, and they've got quick release, and they're also set up like Quinly so that the software that runs those matches the software that you're running on your Quinly at home. And so that we don't have any sort of major hardware differences between our internal production and what our customers are running.
Yeah. Quinly's
Okay.
printed on Quinly's.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, yeah, that was a blast to the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just switch over to our next point, which is a huge point. Keep things organized.
Oh, nice. Yes.
This is something that
This is Mateo's favorite point.
I like this point. I wish more people would agree with me on this point.
Everybody.
Everyone. But tracking a lot of printers is very difficult, and we're trying to build ways of tracking them into Quinly, but you also have to physically track the printers. So I guess like your printers, even though we've been saying the contrary for like the last hour or so, your printers will break down at some point. Things will break down. you'll have problems. There might be some like freak unexpected thing that just shows up one day, and it'll take you a few days to figure it out.
Spaghetti happens.
Spaghetti.
Or those big globs that form around the
Oh
nozzle
my God.
sometimes. Just inevitable.
The giant.
The globs of death.
Oh my God.
That happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but it's easy to track failures on like a couple printers because you can just see them. But whenever you think like, oh, well, I just see it, that's exact opposite mindset that you need to have from when you're doing automated printing, because with automated printing you don't want to have to look at your printers. Like that's the last thing. You don't want to be messing around with them or touching them. You want to be working on creative stuff, designing products, getting things ready to be printed, but you don't want to actually be looking at and dealing with the printers themselves, because that's not the interesting part. And so when you have more than a couple printers, or even with a couple, it's important to make sure you have a system for tracking things. And so one thing we quickly learned when we had the 50 set up was that things were failing due to like very preventable issues.
Just like routine maintenance tasks that we could do. And like some of these things are just like normal things that you're supposed to do when you have a printer, just like leveling the bed.
Yeah.
Even with auto leveling probes, the bed's got to be at least a little bit close to level.
Mm-hmm.
And then some things, just like the Z offset on the probe, sometimes they will drift a little bit over the course of a month or two, and they just need to be, tightened up a little bit. So we had these issues like occurring at random moments, and we wanted to like standardize the way that we address them. So we had a meeting and discussed this and said, okay, every month we'll check the screws on the printer and make sure that all the screws that tend to loosen over time, they just get tightened up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we level the beds about like once a month, honestly, because the probes are very reliable. And things like even just making sure that nozzles are changed maybe once every 3 months or something, depends on how fast they wear out. But just knowing those sort of timings on those routine maintenance tasks, it really helps if you have that sort of schedule.
Yeah, I know we have a photo. We ran a whiteboard for the organizational system, and I think there should be one in the folder that we had open before.
Okay, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, we had a whiteboard with essentially every printer, or I think it was just saying, okay, this printer needs some maintenance. This one's got an unlevel Z probe, don't use it. And it had everything kind of listed. And it really helped with organization. And we also had some methods that were quite interesting and very simple. They were just these little flip cards that we had. And they were red on one side and they were green on the other. And essentially when it was red, it meant don't use the printer. There's something wrong with it. And then so we had like these little whiteboard markers that we'd use to write down the issue and when it happened. And then, you wouldn't use the printer until you fix it. And when you fix the printer, flip it over, it's green, and it's good to use again. And it was just like a really easy way to sort of identify which printers you can use, which printers you can't, and it just made maintenance a whole lot easier.
Yeah. I think the worst performance we get out of our print farm is when every fix being applied to it is like a Band-Aid fix, which is actually a pretty frequent thing that I found myself tend towards when just running an individual printer, because when you're running a printer manually, you basically you're always there, right? And you also only really care about making sure that the next print is good enough to print. Like the printer is only good enough for the next print to go. So you might just run it until it fails, and then next time you happen to be around the printer, which you would have to be, to remove your parts, you would just, fix it up at that time. And that is like really, really inefficient when applied to an automated system.
Yeah, like we had at my printer at home, sometimes if it fails, I will literally just tape the brim to the bed to make sure it doesn't fall, and that's okay if it's just your only printer.
And if that's you're not printing for production either, right?
Yeah, no, it's just for my own personal stuff.
Cool.
Haven't needed to do that with my Quinly though. Just saying.
But that's part of that is, you'll see, like, part of that is making sure that you're ready and you're preparing things for production. So speaking of that, our next thing is
Oh, we're getting audio again, it seems.
yes. Just give me a second.
It might drop out again.
I know why. I figured out why though. Sorry guys. I've got it working now.
Mateo was just saying the most interesting thing.
I was just saying the most interesting things and you missed it. And now I'll never repeat them again.
Yeah, only we heard the secrets.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, I got it back up. I'll just repeat what I had said. Yes, okay. Right, so what we were saying was, I'm just going back here, was now, okay, well, there's not even a segue. I forgot the segue already.
No, well, I think we were talking about just
the
value of redesigning a printed part for high volume 3D printing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of parts, if you just browse Thingiverse and choose your favorite part, it was not designed for 3D printing, or it was just like ripped from a game or something, or just very unoptimized.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know what you're doing and you can use your design tools like CAD programs, and you know how 3D printers print, you can really optimize how your prints come out just by the design of the model itself. And that can actually save like time and filament and make your models look better. There's a whole slew of like benefits that come from redesigning your own models.
Yeah, and what's awesome about automated printing is that you have the time to spend to design the models better. And they're kind of, I was saying there are two things that you get from that. One is automated printing gives you more time away from the printers to dedicate to making better parts, and every small improvement you make to your part is now actually multiplied over the course of your entire production run. So whether it's some kind of aesthetic improvement, now you have like 100 slightly more aesthetic parts, or if it's a time improvement, you now, your 5 minutes savings that you got from a slicer gets multiplied by 100, and now you have 500 minutes of savings. And one really good example of that is actually we did face shields during, I think it was last June. We were printing face shields for COVID. I'm just trying to pull up a photo here. And we had started with a design that was just on the internet.
Steven, you're being told to drink water.
Oh, Jack.
I'm not sure if you're hydrated properly. Jack
I
is
just had a
concerned.
drink. Man, chill out.
Jack is extremely concerned.
He's just got a fixation with hydration. That rhymed pretty well, actually.
That rhymed really well.
I should start rapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying was we were printing these face shield things, and we had just taken a design from the internet, but it turns out that that design was pretty, it was good, it worked, but it printed quite slowly. So it was about I think it was 75 minutes per shield. And then we had Richard remodel it and do a couple of just very minor and basic optimizations, things like getting it to print without a skirt for priming. He remodeled everything so that it'd be a multiple of the nozzle width, which means the nozzle would have to go back and forth exactly twice in order to get the right thickness, instead of having to do weird tiny amounts of infill.
Yeah, it does those little squiggles sometimes, or those disgusting little partial lines that go into the middle of the two walls.
Yeah, and it just ruins your print. So he remodeled it, and I think if you just looked at them, they would look almost identical to one another, but just remodeling it and changing some of the slicing and G-code settings, we were able to get the time down to, I think it was 35 minutes from 70. Was it 35?
I think it was an hour to 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It was an hour 15 to 35 minutes.
Yeah, and that was just using similar slicing settings.
Yeah.
It just saved a whole lot of unnecessary movements from the printer. And
that remodeling only took about half a day to do, but we printed thousands of these, and so I know one order in particular was 1,000 face shields, and so you're saving 40 minutes per shield times 1,000. It's literally weeks of time that you can either use to print more shields or use to print other things.
Yeah, and that's just 2 or 3 hours of human time to save 2,000 or 3,000 hours of printer time.
Yeah,
which maybe you're worth it. Maybe you're worth 1,000 hours of printer time.
Maybe.
Depends on how many printers you have.
Yeah. Okay, the next segment, and I guess so this is considered remodeling. The next one is just optimizing your slicing. So, Steven, why don't you tell us why this is important?
Yeah. Well, so once you've optimized your model, the next step is to optimize the way that you slice it. And so there's, you have to slice the part for the part that it is. So if you've got a very large, engineering part that just needs to be strong and, fairly solid, you can just use, thick lines, thick layers, don't really care too much about what it looks like, just as long as it works, then it works. But we also have, different kind of metrics to judge prints by. So if you want to optimize for speed, if you just want to pump out as many prints as fast as possible, that's actually what we tend to like doing, is printing as many as possible. Mm-hmm. You can just get these little tricks that you learn along the way, just knowing how fast your printer can print, just getting close to that maximum flow rate before it starts under extruding, and also tuning things like acceleration, which is important, and even things like retraction, little Z-hop movements, those all add up as well, and even travel moves as well. So there's a lot of little ways that you can squeeze more out of your prints.
Yeah, and basically if you decide to, you know, take the shortcut and save half an hour by not optimizing slicing, you could actually be costing yourself way more for every model that you print that's slower. And I think a good example of this was the Wong boxes, which we showed last stream, which are these 7x7, they're basically just a box, but the aesthetics were very important to this client. And so originally, just slicing with our default profile, the box took about 14 hours. But over time, as we iterated, and the nice thing with 3D printing is you can actually do production and then iterate while you're doing production.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, update the best model or best G code to the rest of your farm.
Yeah, like it's still good to have like slow prints going.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, like you put one 14-hour print on, and your printer is still being productive for those 14 hours, and in the meantime, you know, you can try and keep optimizing it.
Yeah.
And so we found, so it's a box, and for him what was important was the side surfaces, because that's what's most visible, and the top surfaces, the box have, you know, contents in them that cover some of the top surfaces. And what we quickly realized was, okay, well, a 0.8 nozzle will look just as good because the line widths are not a big deal, and that already basically halves the time in a lot of circumstances.
We got a mention of Clipper in the chat from Jack. What do you guys think about the use of that to speed up your prints?
We can talk about that, yeah, after the slicing, because that's sort of a step beyond slicing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like these parts were aesthetic; they didn't have to be structural. So one really cool setting in Cura that I love is stepped infill. So you start. It basically lets you do lower infills closer to the bottom of the part, and only have high infill when like your top surfaces are being done. So your top surfaces end up being really nice when the majority of the model is like 5% infill or something like that.
Yeah, actually Cura is full of so many like cool features to speed up and improve your prints.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are hidden, but
yeah, a lot of them are under experimental too.
Yeah, like another good one is adaptive layers. It's sometimes hard to actually find a good use for it, but sometimes I've used it and it's actually saved so much time. Yeah,
usually when it comes to trying to optimize speed while maintaining aesthetics is when you'll discover these. But yeah, so your first batches will always be slower. So in the case of long boxes, they were 14 hours each. And slowly we brought them down, I think, first to 12 hours, and now I think they vary between 8 and 10 hours. So we're already saving just slicing and that nozzle or that extrusion width change. We're already saving about 4 hours per Wong box. So for every 2 Wong boxes, we're basically gaining an additional Wong box.
Yeah.
Which is
33%,
pretty impressive.
33% improvement.
Yeah, just by messing around with Slicer. And the best part is, because the printers are automated, you can have them running while you're messing around with the Slicer. So it's always good to start with quality and then look at like what areas you can cut down on in terms of gaining speed. Another important thing about slicing is reducing waste in post-processing. So this is something that we try to do on our production, is like finding ways of creatively priming the nozzle such that you don't need to use things like skirts or rafts or brims. Rafts we just try to avoid altogether because the adhesion is really good already. You don't really need a raft ever. Except in some special cases. And the same thing goes for brims. And then with skirt, we tend to print with a skirt for the first iteration of a part. And then if we're printing a lot of that part, it makes sense to go in and like make it prime within the actual footprint of the part so that you don't have any skirt to remove.
Yeah, we had a really cool method of that Richard did, where the skirt would actually be like 3D queue and then a part number, which was super interesting.
Yeah, and then that part number was embedded into the bottom of our face shield, which was really like really really useful, because I think we had to for those. I guess just a quick list of like slicing settings to look at that are huge time savers but don't affect quality are things like the gradual infill steps I was mentioning that we do on Wong boxes. Your layer height for your internal infill can be different from the layer height for the walls. So you can double the infill layer height, so it only prints an infill every 2 layers, and it's twice as thick every 2 layers. But it'll print walls at the normal rate, so you can do that. That's very helpful because you're basically removing half of your infill time.
Yeah, same for support too. You can do that with support layers.
Yeah, and support, you don't need support to be beautiful.
No.
If you're doing
throwing it away.
Yeah, it's going in the garbage, so it can be anything. But yeah, doubling the support layer height, you can, that I think you have to go into advanced settings, but those are in Cura as well. You already mentioned adaptive layers, which again is an aesthetics thing, but saves a ton of time.
There's also the bridging and overhanging overhang settings from Cura that will like change the speed depending on the angle of the overhang, which is really cool. And then the bridge settings, which will reduce flow when it's doing a bridge.
Yeah,
it's really good for optimizing that.
Yeah, the thing is, if you can nail your bridges and overhangs, then you don't need support, and support adds so much extra time to your prints.
Actually, you want to avoid post-processing entirely.
Yeah.
Which we try to avoid, but sometimes it's inevitable. But yeah, because that's human time, and we don't like using human time when it could be 3D printing time.
Yes, yes, exactly. I don't. Do you guys have any slicing tricks that you've used to save a bunch of time? Would be, yeah, I'm definitely curious to know.
There'll be a delay, so.
Oh right, there's going to be a
we'll
20-second delay.
segment.
How fast can you print a bench sheet? I know Jack prints stuff at amazing speeds.
Set got down to 30 seconds.
Yeah. Also, Media Man.
20 minutes maybe.
Media Man prints really fast as well, and did he get most beautiful print in our previous contest?
He did, I think.
Yeah, he said he was printing that.
No, I think it was lead paint that won that.
Was it?
He came really close to winning.
Yeah,
Very close.
I think lead paint chose a better color.
Yeah.
Oh, is that?
Because they both look really good.
Yeah,
but I think the Prusa orange was a bit too default.
One of the contenders for the best looking print in our previous contest printed it at 100 millimeters per second, and like that level, that's not like an easy slicing cheat, but dialing in your printer to the point where it can print that fast, and that just, temperatures, retraction, that obviously will save a lot of time across all your prints, not even print specific slicing. Speaking of slicing, let's actually address Jack's comment on Clipper. Clipper is something we were looking at. It's apparently very, because you just set it up, but it's very, very difficult to set up. But if there was some way to integrate it into Quinly so that it's kind of preset for you, that's something that would be really interesting. But I know Clipper can be quite divisive just because it's so difficult to set up for a machine.
Yeah, well, I've seen people having this, like you put an accelerometer on your printer and you go at different frequencies to find the resonant frequencies, and then Clipper somehow manages to work your G-code in a way that it doesn't go on those resonant frequencies. And I'm sure it also does some other cool stuff too. I just thought that was very interesting. It lets you print, those 300 millimeters per second 5-minute benchies that we're seeing now.
Yeah. It is pretty impressive. It's just very hard to integrate. But it is something, the problem is you can't preset it. It's tuned to each printer, and if there was a way to script it, somebody would have already developed that. So Yeah, I think we just have to do more research and figure out if there's a way to get Quinly to just feed right into somebody else's clipper in case they have it. But there is also a couple open source libraries being worked on for that do that.
Is it input shaping?
Input shaping, yeah. There are a couple libraries out there. The other thing would be to just pull the input shaping from Clipper and make a custom way for Quinly to talk to it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
cool.
it's you have to tune it to a particular machine, and from what we've seen, and I encourage you to post your pictures of your setups, but people are deploying Quinly on like very, very different machines. So I think the best we can do for now is just point you to a guide to set up Clipper.
Yeah, because at this point, like, even if you have a different hot end, then your values for input shaping will be different.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
all variable.
It's too bad. I think at some point it will get there to the point where it's just a very easy install. But I think
Yeah.
until it becomes that easy, that just the time investment for each printer. I mean, it is an investment. It depends how much faster you can print. It's like what we were talking about earlier. Is maybe it does take you 5 hours, but if you can print twice as fast and your printer doesn't break down because it's not resonating, it might be worth the time investment to do it.
Yeah. These long-term investments.
Yeah, you have to think about it as an investment. Okay, next segment. So our next.
Oh, we actually have a question in chat about Arc Welder, the
Arc
thing
Welder.
that connects curves into G-code.
The old G2s and G3s.
Another question from Kevin.
I've never actually used Arc Welder, but I want to try it. I think I've actually disabled arcs on my printer's firmware, so it wouldn't even work. I'd have to change my firmware back, but I know Arc Welder is actually really good for those really short G-code movements. So if you're running like an older processor with an 8-bit processor that can't handle those tiny little movements, using Arc Welder could boost your print speed just by reducing the stuttering that comes out of the G-code.
Yeah. Yeah, if you print really fast, I've noticed you'll hit the limits of what, on an 8-bit board, it's possible to hit the limits of what it can process
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
You'll see that on like vase mode prints if you try to go super fast,
Mhm.
because every single Z change is a tiny little Z change.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, it does hit the limits of the board. So I could see Arc Welder being used
Yeah.
for that, just to be able to raise the limit of 8-bit boards. I still haven't tried it. I mean, Kevin told me about it a while ago. I just haven't had time to try it. I think it would be
Yeah.
pretty beneficial.
I've heard great results from people using it though.
Mm-hmm.
It also makes G-code smaller, so it might
Yeah, it compresses the file.
be easier to work with.
Okay. So our next tip is avoid doing like really large batches. And there are two reasons. You can say the obvious reason.
Oh, okay. Well, large batches, they take a long time. They have a lot of parts, and if one of those parts fails, then the nozzle will start dragging around bits of plastic that get stuck onto other parts, and eventually those parts will probably fall off too, and it will just become a mess. And so there's not really a benefit to doing batch prints if you have an automated system. And actually what we find is just printing parts one at a time, or just having like a very sparse batch of like 4 or 9 will be like the optimum for just number of parts while reducing defects. Because if one print fails on a batch of 9, then sometimes all 9 become useless. And so there's actually sort of like 2 different curves that will cross over. And we found that 9 is about the point where, defects and productivity sort of mesh.
And it depends also on the size of your parts as well. But
yeah, true.
One of the other things with batching is it's a very difficult thing to optimize.
Yeah.
right? Just in general. A lot of people will think, like in terms of optimization, you'll hear batching and be like, oh, you mean space packing. And humans are pretty good at finding a good way of packing parts into a certain space. And if you plan on running one batch over and over again, maybe it is worth the time investment to um, optimize the space packing for this particular plate. But like Steven said, the more parts and the longer the print becomes, the more you stand to lose as well.
Yeah.
So like if, you know, a 24-hour batch fails, in our example of $10 an hour, you just lost $240 worth
Yeah.
of productivity. But there are also like other optimization things that a lot of people do when running farms, not just in terms of space, but in terms of filament usage. So that's like one of these limiting factors is if you have a batch of prints, you also want your filament usage to be a predictable round number. Like if you're running a kilogram spool, you want your batch to be about 200 grams of filament so that you can do 5 batches per spool. And if it's over 200, then you might end up, like if it's 201, for example, you'll end up doing 4 batches and then you'll be 4 grams short on your final batch, and that
Yeah.
entire final batch gets thrown out because you've just run out of filament.
Yeah. Or you'll have just this spool with like a bit of filament on it that you don't want to use because you only get a couple prints out of it and you can't do your batch on it. So it's just kind of this
So then
annoying
do you like
empty.
switch the batch to a single print, and like when do you have time to think about or do that, or do you accidentally print a batch and just run out of filament partway through? That's something to consider. So when you're doing individual parts, your filament usage is like quantized to much smaller numbers, right? So you're not going to end up like with 170 grams left on your spool that you can't use to print any of your batches.
Yeah, like if you have a 15-gram part, the most that you waste is 15 grams,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
14 grams, right? If you don't have that very final part of your filament left on the spool.
The other thing to consider is like if a batch fails and like you cancel it and then it doesn't use the full amount of filament it was going to, now you've got a weird spool again.
Yeah,
and
even if you
have to
planned it
track
perfectly, then it doesn't work out with your spool.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a question about print order on those kind of batches where you print one at a time on a bed. How do you guys manage that?
That's actually, so that is one way to get around batches, and that's why Steven says like a low number like 9 for small parts is really good. Because if you do Cura's one at a time feature, then each part will be complete before the next is able to run out of filament. And so in terms of print order, I think we do front and then middle and then back.
I think we actually go like,
When I arranged it, I did front, middle, back.
yeah, okay. I think on the ones we have now, it just goes like down, up, from right to left.
So top to bottom, right to left?
It does a zigzag across the bed, I think.
Oh, okay. So it might just be Cura's default ordering.
Yeah.
It depends on when you place them down on the bed. That's how it depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we tend to, I guess what we're saying is there's not a strict order, but you tend to want to be printing the next one like directly adjacent to the previous one.
Yeah, that's just limiting travel movements, really.
Yeah.
And you know, if you print the thing 1,000 times, that actually adds up.
Yeah, and so that is one of the other thing with like the traditional batch where it's doing entire layers at once. It's sometimes not more efficient to batch. Actually, a lot of times it's not because of the travel movements. If you have a ton of parts on a bed and it has to keep jumping from part to part to part,
Yeah.
you can end up, and a lot of times do end up, with a print time that is longer than if you were going to print all the parts individually, either individually all on the same bed or individually one after the other. Just because travel time, you're now traveling, you know, n number of parts times per layer.
There's like also retractions for every single one of those travel moves. And
Yeah.
those retractions can sometimes cause issues or strings or even just little defects on the print.
Yeah.
So it's just not good for quality either.
And I think everyone likes to avoid batches for that reason as well. If you're not an expert and you don't have your retractions dialed in, I think it's commonly accepted that like a batched part may end up turning out worse than one that was printed individually on a bed. So that's a great point too.
Yeah, it's just annoying to do batch slicing, like pulling all the parts in, running the G code.
And as soon as you have to adjust anything, it's like all that work kind of goes out the window. So it's not recommended.
Yeah, and usually most models have optimal slicing settings, but for this you actually have to use general slicing settings that work for a bunch of models at the same time.
So
you can't,
you could be losing a lot of time in that. I know Prusa Slicer lets you specify per model ones though, but then
true, yeah, Kura does too actually.
Yeah, so you can do one at a time that way.
That's a lot of extra human time to slice per model on a batch instead of just doing them individually.
Yeah, just doing per model individually. Yeah, it again, it's like, is it worth the time investment? Maybe you're printing 10,000 of these batches, in which case it makes sense to optimize that particular batch really well. But if you're only batching for the sake of having your, doing a couple dozen parts, it's not going to be worth the time investment. So that's always something to consider.
That's my favorite part.
This is probably my favorite tip as well. This is something I've only, like, despite having 3D printed since 2015, I only started doing this last year.
It was a life changer.
Life changer. My life has been changed, that's for sure. You can announce it.
This is my favorite thing, so I guess I should. Tip number 9 is use large nozzles. Large nozzles are so good. Like 0.4 is a standard. I don't know why. It should actually be like 0.6 if I'm being honest. But I love using the 0.8 nozzles. They are so good. Just being able to print in like half the time at equal quality. Equal quality. You can actually get equal quality from a 0.8 nozzle. Surprise.
That's controversial.
It's controversial. I can disprove some of the skeptics out there. But 0.8 nozzle, if you dial it in, you can get like really nice prints half the time, and they'll just look just as good as a 0.4 nozzle.
Mm-hmm. You can even, there is a hack. You can even do a 0.4 nozzle, but increase your line width to 0.8 so that on features where it needs to be 0.4, it can drop back down. If you're like really that.
Yeah, cool, because you can get
like,
it hampers your flow a little bit, but you can get most of the way there, like probably 80% efficiency.
Yeah.
Doing that thick line width on a 0.4 nozzle.
But yeah, big nozzles are like, well, one of the things is the only real thing that the nozzle affects is your minimum like feature detail, and that's affected by the radius of the nozzle. The accuracy of your prints aren't really affected.
Yeah, because the slicer knows the width, and it will compensate for that. It's just, if you have very tight corners, they'll be a little less pronounced. And the only time I really find that is ever an issue is if the first layer is very detailed, and in that case, you can actually just decrease the line width a little bit.
That's true.
Within reason.
Kevin Schaefer is asking if 0.8 nozzles are generally stronger, longer lasting than 0.4s.
Do they last longer? Yes, I believe they do. Probably a couple of reasons, but like imagining.
Oh, he means the models. He just.
Oh, the models. And I was going to go into detail about wear and its hair.
You can also talk about
we can talk about that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the models themselves are a lot stronger. Just because usually when you're printing with a 0.8 nozzle, you get these thicker lines that are completely solid. Whereas if you were printing with a 0.4, you'd get really thin lines that have to be like stuck together in the X and Y direction. And just having like thick, strong lines is just much more important.
More contact areas between the lines as well, whether it's with the layer below or with the layer adjacent. You have
Yeah.
just more contact, and that results in like a stronger part.
Yeah, because the layers are actually sort of bead-like. They're a bit circular.
Yeah.
So in the 0.4, they might even be close to like a squished circle. But on a 0.8, they're actually like very flat for a lot of it, and then just round on the ends.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I guess a 0.4, if you're, it depends on your layer height, right?
Yeah,
So,
true. I'm imagining printing really thick layers with the
yeah.
0.8, which is what I like to do.
It does, I think 0.8 is also very versatile in terms of layer height. Like I've printed 0.15 layers on a 0.8, even though it's not really recommended. You
Mhm.
can get it there, but with a 0.8, you can also go all the way up to like,
I've done 0.7.
you've done 0.7.
Yeah, 0.7
That's
layers.
ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, because the recommended is 75% of the nozzle diameter.
Mm-hmm.
So on a 0.4, you might go to like, what is it, 0.3?
Mm-hmm.
And then so on a 0.8, I guess you should go to 0.6. But
Yeah.
I pushed it a little bit and it worked out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean with my 0.4s, I frequently push 0.8 line width. Like
yeah,
you can definitely cheat. Like and with a 0.8 nozzle, you could probably get 0.9 or 1 millimeter line widths if you had to.
I have done 1.3 millimeter line width
Okay.
on
Was
0.8
that
knots.
that's crazy. Was that
Yeah.
with a stock extruder or?
Actually, that was on my Monoprice Maker Select. That
Okay.
wasn't on a Quinly, to be fair.
To be fair.
But it was on like a fairly low power hot end,
Right.
and it was what I was using to punt face shields.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
Gotta
Nice.
love the large nozzles.
Yeah, well, it's like the easiest way to cut your models in half, like the model print time in half, and like very few models require details and features that are under 0.8,
Yeah.
especially in production and like for engineering purposes.
Yeah, that's why I don't use them at all, really.
Yeah.
0.4 at all. It's just because that's all I do.
There's a cool example of 0.8 resolution on the Discord actually on the live stream channel.
Okay, I'll pull that up.
Yeah, if you could pull that up.
Why don't you go into talk about why 0.8 nozzles themselves are better when printing, not the models, but the nozzles themselves.
Right, yeah. So I was going to go into detail about like wear and tear on the nozzles. But the 0.8 millimeter nozzles, they reduce the pressure required to extrude filament out the nozzle, and lower pressure means there's less sort of wear and tear going on. And what happens if you're printing with a 0.8 nozzle and there's this large surface area that gets slowly abraded, it might get just a little bit bigger, but you're printing with 0.8, it doesn't matter. You're probably pushing like a 1 millimeter line width anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas for 0.4, you're actually interested in that quality. And so if your nozzle starts expanding and getting a bit bigger, then you will see that show up in your prints as bad quality.
Yeah, your relative with like when it wears down, your relative diameter changes slower with 0.8.
Yeah, as a percent increase, it's half.
Yeah. So that is very convenient. Means you're replacing your nozzles less often. That means the impact of them wearing down is much, much lower as well. So I'm just pulling up an image here. Like here's some of the features that you can get from a 0.8 nozzle. So this thin cursive text was actually printed with 0.8. I guess for reference, like one of these letters is probably about a centimeter tall, right?
I guess, yeah.
It was about
Yeah.
This thing
much.
wrapped around your forehead.
Yeah, this was one of the this is the top of one of the headbands that we were printing.
So yeah, that's your head radius for reference.
Your head rate, if you have a normal size head.
Some people in the chat have big brains, so
Huge brain.
yeah.
Yeah, but this is a really cool example. So this whole thing was printed with 0.8, and through modeling, we were able to get the 0.8 to print this cursive text quite nicely. And I think the text was actually done in Rhino, but Richard can correct me if that's...
It probably was. It's his favorite.
Yeah.
And like imagine trying to print that, getting Cura to slice that on like a
0.4, you would have
on
like...
a 0.4 on like a
So
SVG
many.
file you took on from online, it won't be optimized for
Yeah.
slicing at all.
It would not look that
It'll
good.
have those little zigzags and little unfilled parts and overfilled parts.
Mm-hmm.
But we just got this nice swooping motion.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
But that's partially because we designed it to be printed with 0.8.
Yeah, going back to point like 6.
Yeah. And you talked about composite materials, right?
No.
Oh, the hole is bigger, so any sort of composite materials in your filament are less likely to get caught.
Yeah, that's
And-
actually quite important. Like wood, trying to print wood through a 0.4 nozzle is just no fun at all.
No.
Printing through a 0.8 nozzle, it's just like the same as normal PLA. So
Pretty much.
I had fun well, it's very stringy actually, but I had fun printing some wood filament last year. And actually trying to get those retractions dialed in for the 0.8 nozzle, that was my challenging material.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the best way was to reduce retraction speed from like 40 down to 20,
Yeah.
25. So, little tip for 0.8 users, low retraction speed is good.
Okay, before we move on to the 10th and final point. Oh, you drank your water. I was gonna say,
Wow.
oh, you
Okay.
have
Still
some
some
left.
left?
There's still a little
There's
bit left.
still some left.
Okay, wow.
Okay, let's see how many likes
Jack
we're at.
is excited.
We're at 10 likes. Okay, if we get to 15, we will both simultaneously drink the remaining water.
Jack and Flip saw going wild in chat soon.
Oh, he posted in chat some of his 1.2 millimeter layer height prints.
Oh, in our Discord?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I believe
Okay.
he used a 2.5 millimeter nozzle.
What?
Let me pull.
What kind of hot end do you have? Super volcano?
That's ridiculous.
I want to get a super volcano actually.
Oh my, these
You
are.
got to use 3 millimeter
Damn.
filament, I guess.
So you could just print your own filament at that point.
Yeah, right?
Just
That's
print
how
your
you
own.
shoot filament.
I want to actually do this thing where we print filament and then we use that filament that gets cooled and goes right into another printer.
Into an.
It's just like a
I don't
chain
know
of
how
printers
possible that would-
printing filament into each other.
Yeah, this would definitely save you on print time. But again, it depends on your use case and application. Like, this is definitely not an aesthetically pleasing part. But
It
it's
is to me.
probably the strongest part ever.
Depends on
I
what
love
the
those
model
layers.
looks like.
That's true.
It looks like a 3D printed house on small scale.
Yeah,
If you're printing a Fresnel lens or something.
it does. Okay,
Bumps.
final point.
So 1 like is 1 water sip for you guys?
5 likes is I'll finish my water with Steven.
All right. What do we?
It's at 11 right now.
Oh wow. They've
No, we're going to 15.
15. Oh, interesting.
That's the incentive.
Call it-
Okay.
get your friends on here.
We're at our
Yeah.
last point, so you don't have much time. This actually is, I mean, all these points are sort of in no particular order in terms of importance because they're all very, very, very important.
That's why we
Um,
chose them.
That's why we chose them.
Jack's upset that you called his part not pleasing.
I found it pleasing. I like those large layers. Mateo's a very like some of his
I'm
prints are really
more-
nice quality and you don't even know that they have layers.
Yeah,
I just love those layers.
we're opposites.
Yeah, we have a different style.
It's so funny looking at someone else's Cura settings and being like, what were they thinking?
Oh man, I love judging people's Cura settings.
Yeah. But then you realize they're looking at yours the same exact way.
Yeah.
Like, what is he thinking?
Yeah, I've actually gotten into fun arguments with people. They're like, this is never a good thing to do in Cura. It's like, no, I'm just doing this really dumb thing with my printer
Yeah.
that actually makes it worth doing. It's like, oh, all right, cool. We're fine.
Yeah, it actually works. Yeah. Damn.
Congrats.
That's going to be a problem though, because Quinly will free up so much of people's time to work on their slicing settings that these arguments are going to become like
Yeah.
more and more intense.
So heated.
Oh
Yeah, I think-
no.
The guy was doing like art on his first layer. I was like,
Oh,
you
there's
have weird first layer settings, bro. But then
yeah.
it
looks
was
really
actually good.
Yeah. Okay, so last point. Number 10, right?
Yeah, we've done 10 points.
Good.
Or 9 so far. 10 is our final point.
10 is our final point. Standardize your filament. Standardize your filament.
I'm not gonna say it again.
It's very important to standardize your filament. There are a lot of reasons for this. You want to make sure, well, okay, so the first reason is consistent performance.
We're at 18 likes.
Oh man.
Oh,
Okay,
what the heck? Okay, we gotta finish our water, and then I'll start over.
Here, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Oh no.
Oh my, that's too much. He's overhydrated.
Water toxicity.
Holy. Thank you.
Oh,
Cheers to the
you
light.
made me chug the water. Oh. Give me a moment.
Okay, okay. Give me a second.
Alright, we need some coffee.
These,
Oh.
these stunts are,
Oh, I'm just so hydrated. I just can't right now.
these
Oh my
stunts
God.
are too dangerous. We can't
Oh.
we can't keep doing this.
I promised Leah I'd embarrass myself on stream today.
Just for her.
That was it.
Perfect.
Well, I didn't promise it, but I said I probably would. So.
Okay. So as I was saying, standardize your filament because
Oh man.
because yeah, filament is like your base, one of the base things you depend on for consistency. So you want to make sure you're buying high quality filament, or at least very, very consistent filament. And again, it's kind of like what you get what you pay for. You could find a gem that's like really cheap, and quite a few of those exist, but then stick to it and make sure that you can have a pretty steady supply. Especially with COVID in our farm, we've had a lot of issues with filament supply, and like manufacturers probably behind the scenes reorganizing and then that affecting the quality of filament that we were getting
Yeah. Or just our favorite filament just stopped being available randomly.
in our country,
Yeah, and we just
Yeah.
couldn't get it.
which was, yeah. So once you do find those filaments that work for you, that work for most things you're doing, like stick with it and make sure you have a very safe supply. This applies more to print farms, but you'll notice that you'll run through a lot of filament when you're printing, like with automated printing, especially with a 0.8 nozzle. Like you could end up replacing your filament every 2 or 3 days, replacing an entire spool, and that's per printer. So I think when we were doing our face shields, which was a 0.8 nozzle, and we had a very high flow rate on those, we were replacing spools every 36 hours.
Yeah,
And
I
we
think
had,
that's the limit for our nozzle
yeah,
hot end combo. But yeah.
yeah. We had 9 printers doing that. So we in that 1,000, like in that trial that we were measured for, we probably like within a week went through about 25 kilos
Yeah.
of filament, which is a lot.
And that was actually, I think, most of the downtime on the printers. It was like 1 hour of downtime or 1.5.
Yeah.
All of that was changing filament.
Just changing filament over. And so, yeah, it's not like, I know a lot of people love collecting materials, but when you think about, okay, every material you have has to be calibrated for production, otherwise you'll be losing a lot of time putting things on and having them fail. Having fewer materials is much more beneficial in that case. So
Yeah, I like to say it's not like you're running a print farm, not an ice cream store. Less options is better.
yeah, exactly. And if you have to do specialty colors, that maybe someone requests a custom color, then you have to make sure that you charge accordingly for that, because it will take your time and it will likely cause downtimes because you have to iterate on that particular color of filament if you're going for the best result possible, right?
I know we have a good photo now on the live stream Discord channel showing what our print farm looked like with consistent filament supply.
Okay, I'll pull that up.
So we're getting a picture here of our filament supply.
Yeah, I believe it was MCPP. I'm not 100% sure. That's what the spools look like to my eye.
Yeah.
Before I was here.
Hold on. it's very zoomed in. But what we decided to do a couple months after we got all the printers for our print farm was just to pick one supplier and have all of our standard colors come from that one supplier. So I'll just add that in now while we're talking. But yeah, why else is it important, Steven?
Yeah, well, you know how you get used to slicing for a particular filament? If you end up buying the same brand, which I do, you just know which temperatures it prints well at, and you know sort of how to get the first layer to stick properly. And I found that, like, if you're not changing brands all the time, it really just makes slicing a lot easier. It takes, like, you don't need to worry about material settings, essentially. And I found even if I'm using different colors, if they're from a very similar brand, you don't need to change your settings at all. And that really saves time.
Sometimes the case, for sure.
Yeah. In other cases, if you're getting like matte colors or like white in particular can be weird, then you do have to have different settings. But if you got red, blue, and purple, they'll all probably print the same.
Yeah.
From what I found.
Yeah, this is actually at our supplier of filament, a setup that they have. And they were running a bunch of different filaments, but they produce all of these colors. Yeah, so that's what we did. Was pretty early on, we just bulk bought a bunch of filament once we had tested it, and we would just offer those as standard colors to our clients. I think we got black, silver, and like a gray.
Dark gray.
Yeah. With sparkles.
We had what, like 300 kilos total?
I think that's what we bought.
Like 100 of each color.
Yeah.
And that was actually super helpful just because you'd have like 3 options and they all look really good, and you didn't really have to worry about weird naming conventions to figure out what color, what brand you were using.
Yeah, because before that, we did have a job where we were running, the job that we learned from was we were offering a product in like 14 different colors, and some of those colors only needed 2 or 3 spools, which is nice because you can do really low production runs with 3D printing. But because it was in a color and a brand that we had never tested before, we actually had a lot of issues getting it to work in the first place. And in the end, it ended up not being worth it, as opposed to now where we just kind of pick from our library of materials that we know work really well. And I think most people sort of tend to stick to one brand, but it's just important to stress how critical it might be to your production. Reslicing is like the last thing that you want to do, because whenever you reslice, you basically start iterating from the beginning. And if you have to suddenly switch brands of filament, all those minor changes make a difference when you're running on an automated farm, because any minor downtime, again, gets multiplied across all your printers, across all your parts, and it can result in like really huge costs. The other nice thing is that you can save a lot of money by buying in bulk. So if you find a filament that you like, try to contact the manufacturer and just be like, hey, buy a couple months worth at a time.
Yeah.
It's nice with the automated printers because they chew through so much filament. You'll be able to justify ordering much higher volumes.
Yeah, like if you get 100 kilos at a time, you can contact the supplier directly, like Alibaba or something even, and just say like, hey, I know you just give me the good stuff. I got like a lot of printing to do. $10 a roll maybe, and like you get like really good deals.
Yeah, and the other nice thing is if you are ordering those quantities, you can get supplier. If you're looking at overseas suppliers, but even ones within North America or Europe, you can ask them for samples, and they'll happily send you a sample roll or a sample thing so that you can make sure that it is compatible with your process and with your parts, and with your printer before you go and buy the 100 kilos. The other nice thing is if you are ordering hundreds of kilos at a time, the suppliers will treat you differently. If something goes wrong, they won't just say, oh, return it, whatever. You don't just, well, a lot of places don't even let you return it, but they'll actually like work with you and try to understand what went wrong so that they can either improve their formulation or find where in the system something's going wrong. So that is also...
You'll become a valued customer as soon as you put in your first order.
Yeah, I guess if you spend more money on Filament, they'll want to retain you.
Yeah.
Jack says he doesn't pay for Filament, so that he's somehow managed to work the ultimate discount of free Filament. I don't know how that works.
They pay him to print.
They pay him to print. Oh, well, I mean, if you're running a print farm, everyone is paying you to print. So, good point there. Kevin's saying, how many filaments have been added to this spreadsheet? I know that...
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about the email list we sent out a month ago.
I haven't checked it, but I know for sure, just from what we've tested and from talking directly with customers, there's definitely over 60 different brands and colors of filament and materials that have been tested with the vapor bed. So that's also something nice. Even though you can standardize filaments, that's more important for the outcome of the model, but the vapor bed is, you know, engineered to work with pretty much anything. So we have some recommended brands, and there are brands that our users on Discord will recommend, but it's not necessarily a limitation, like in the case that you can't get it in your country. Yeah.
Apparently Jack, he gave us a reason on how he gets his free filament. It's because he gets sent so many samples.
Ah, smart.
I was contacted on Reddit by somebody that wanted me to test out filament for them.
Really?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but then there was a whole PayPal thing going on, and I didn't want to.
Oh,
with it.
Jack.
The free filament that costs money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll refund you later.
Oh, God.
Send us a gift card.
Yeah. Jack's like, going back to your ice cream store analogy, Jack's the kind of guy who goes and tastes every single flavor in the store.
Right.
Yeah.
He'll just have these like
And then
100-gram rolls that he splices together to print his part.
Yeah.
I've seen those. Those actually look pretty cool. They look like those ice creams that come in 3 different colors. Like the Neapolitan.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Okay, well, that's it. So yeah, I'm just going to stress one more time. Standardize your filament. You don't want like a change in filament supply. That was probably one of the most disruptive things we experienced last year running our print farm, is suddenly filament, we couldn't get it anymore. It was really delayed. And then we have to basically restart the troubleshooting process with a brand new filament, redo a lot of slicing, or sacrifice print speed just in order to keep the farm going. So I would definitely suggest securing some way of getting material, and materials that you've tested and like. Yeah, so I guess, should we summarize what we've learned here today?
We've gone over a lot, so
We've gone over quite a few. So
put it in a nutshell.
in summary, I'll start. You can do evens, I'll do odds.
Cool.
Number 1 was optimize things on one printer first before copying it to the rest of the printers in your farm. This will make sure that any sort of problems with your components are identified very early on, and you come up with a solution so that those problems do not plague the rest of your print farm, especially when making changes.
Yeah, and so the next point is invest in reliability and time savings. So that means sometimes it might cost a little bit more money to get a high quality part, but that will actually save you so much time and hassle throughout
And
the
cost.
lifetime. And cost, yeah. Something that doesn't need to be replaced as often saves you much more time than just the replacement cost.
Number 3, get involved in the community. A lot of people are already in communities for regular printing. The community is an amazing resource because all these crazy people who bought into 3D printing very early on have spent a lot of time making their printers work very well, some to the point of obsession. And like it's true, and learn from them. And I should mention we do have a Discord full of people who are running Quinlys and who are getting them either set up for their first time or getting them set up on additional printers now. And that is a really useful resource for getting your automated system started, whether it's your first printer or whether you're starting to scale up now. Definitely get involved with the Discord. Also, all of our staff are here, so
Yeah, we're all kind of experts in Quinly.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like we made it or something.
Yeah.
Right, so next fourth point is to consider climate control. That's alliteration. But in general, the environment that you keep the printers in is quite important, and 3D printing reliably means you need a very consistent environment. So you need the good temperatures, and you don't want drafts. You don't want random times throughout the day where you're getting, different changes in temperature. And just in general, just having a consistent, nice enclosed area that doesn't heat up or cool down, it's very nice.
And I should mention, it doesn't have to be very strict. Like in our case, when we were sharing our warehouse experience, it was varying like 10 degrees or 15 degrees throughout a day.
Yeah, it was extreme.
Yeah, it was
And it
pretty
had dust
extreme.
raining down
Yeah.
all day.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
But always think about your environment is just as important as your print settings. Number 5, keep things organized. So it's very, very important to track things because you will run into issues and things that are unique to your particular situation. And over time, you want to build some sort of catalog or database of issues that you've experienced so that you don't have to troubleshoot things over and over again. And this becomes extra important when working in a group because everyone else who's working with you on your print farm needs to be on the same page about that. So making sure to track failures, causes of failures, what printers are up, what printers are down is very, very important. Otherwise, you're basically starting from scratch every single time something goes wrong. And things will go wrong.
We know that.
Yeah.
From firsthand.
We've learned that. Point 11.
Yeah, so 6th point is to consider redesigning parts. And this is to make the model itself optimized for 3D printing. So we found that a lot of the parts that, if they haven't really been designed with 3D printing in mind, they won't be as good as they could be, or they'll just print out so slowly that it just makes it efficient for us to spend an hour to redesign the part using nice round numbers in the line width and layer height, just so that it prints out without extra movements.
Mm-hmm.
That just saves so much time.
Yeah. And then after you've redesigned your parts, point 7, optimize your slicing. Spend some time, or rather invest some time in getting those print times down and making sure that your settings are tailored to your model. I'd always say work from a base profile, but it does maybe taking the extra 5 or 10 minutes to optimize for your particular model is always worth it, because if you save, even just taking 10 minutes to save 20 minutes of print time on a part, you've already paid yourself off in a single print. But now consider with automation, again, you're now thinking in the context of hundreds or thousands of parts, and every couple minutes you save could be hours or days worth of print time that you're now opening up.
Yeah, so next point is to avoid large batch prints. And we find that having a lot of parts on a plate can cause, well, it can increase the likelihood of a defect coming up, ruining the batch. And even just having so many parts on a plate that involves so many travel moves, so many retractions, and so many sort of small little inconsistencies that can add up and overall reduce the quality of your prints. And as well, doing these batch prints, it takes a lot of effort to slice, to lay them out in an efficient way, and just having to use a general profile that kind of works with everything, it really kind of limits what you can do with 3D printing.
Number 9 is switch to a larger nozzle. Even going up to a 0.6 from a 0.4 will save you a lot of time, but we recommend 0.8 if you're doing, for most parts, not in the case of like highly detailed and highly aesthetic parts, but for most general use, 0.8 can be really good. And just think about, most models don't have any features that are smaller than 0.8 millimeters that a 0.8 nozzle can't do. So that is one of the easiest ways to save time in general. Or consider a 0.8 line width if you don't want to switch the whole nozzle. You'll save so much time. It's such an easy way to save time. And they also save on maintenance as well.
Gotta love the large nozzles.
Yeah.
They're my favorite. Actually kind of jealous you got to talk about them.
So you get to talk about this one.
Yeah, okay, well I can talk about ice cream stores. So yeah, your print farm is not an ice cream store. Having just a few options of filament is going to save you so much time. Just being able to know intimately how your 1 or 2 or 3 colors of filament print will make slicing a whole lot easier. It'll make sourcing your filament a whole lot easier. You'll be able to save money by buying it in bulk, and you might even make some friends with suppliers because you'll be a valued customer since you buy so much.
Yeah. So tell us, like, for those of you who have stuck around or who have watched bits and pieces of it so far, let us know like what tip you think you'll find most helpful. Do you have already a print farm at home, or are you considering, now that you've got your one printer automated, are you considering getting some more, setting up like a fully fledged print farm? These are 10 tips, and I would say they're all actually quite easy to execute, but it took a lot of learning and a lot of trial and error to get to this point. So I would definitely suggest use this stream kind of as a manual, or use the recap as reference, and just think about these things as you start adding more and more printers, because all these points do apply to regular print farms, but these are extra important when it comes to the context of automation, because working on these 10 points are what's going to get the most value out of your printers when you set up your farm.
Yeah, and also another good point I think is just having like discipline about this. Like sort of doing things in a standardized way that you found to be good is usually the best way to go. Just if you make snap decisions or just what you feel is right, it's probably not the best way to go. And so we found out these 10 tips were based on years of experience of us figuring out what works and what doesn't. So they'll all be like a really good starting point for if you want to do it yourself.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear from Jack.
He's suggesting point 11.
I'm not reading point 11.
But then, Kevin's point 12.
Yeah, I'm listening to Kevin's point 12.
Yeah.
But that implies the existence of point 11. So do we even recognize that point 11 exists in the first place?
If point 12 does, then point 11 doesn't.
This is like almost a paradox.
And then point 13 is to ignore rule 12 and then all other points.
And all others, but that would just invalidate the whole stream, so we don't include 13.
Okay, we don't include 13.
But 12 is actually where we draw the line.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin recently purchased a couple more DIY kits. I'd be curious to hear like what kind of things have you been thinking about? Where have you been setting them up? Or where do you think you'll be setting them up to? Because
how many Quinlys will that be anyway? He's got like 3 already.
I think 4. Or no,
I think he has
6.
3 right now, I think. So
6 then.
could be more. He was saying, yeah, please don't make me take my wallet out this time too.
No,
Actually hoping he's
next
gonna...
stream. Next stream.
Next stream.
Just send it in the mail or something.
Yeah, yeah. Sure. Yeah, Steph mentioned structure sets you free.
Yeah. It's like the boring thing that actually
It's
is
true.
actually really good.
It's true, yeah. It definitely is true. Like working within a framework, it saves you a lot of unnecessary thinking so that you can
Yeah.
focus on other things. Kind of like how Quinly saves you on a lot of unnecessarily manual tasks with 3D printing.
Yeah. It all comes down to us just being lazy and not wanting to think about things.
Yeah.
So we just want to have a nice, easy step-by-step tutorial.
Yeah. Set it up in the beginning and then you can be extra lazy later.
Yeah.
When your print farm is just working in the background for you, doing all your parts.
Quinly, how to maximize your laziness.
Yeah. Yeah.
New slogan on your website.
New slogan, yeah.
We love being lazy.
Yeah. Except all of us spend that extra time designing more things to print usually.
Yeah, too bad we're like obsessed with the hobby.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Jack adding, I can't wait for my easy thread Quinly. I think the easy thread, based off what you've shared in the Discord, like invalidates all 10 points that we brought up today.
I don't even know if we can say stay tuned on that one.
Maybe just for Jack.
Just for
Maybe
Jack.
literally just for Jack. I don't even, oh my
The
God.
yield rate on that would, I can't imagine it would be great.
No. Maybe we can let Jack try to DIY it himself.
Just send him a plate.
If you can figure it
Oh
out,
my
yeah.
God.
Oh no, it looks like we lost Kevin. He
Oh, no.
fell off the stream.
He's gone.
He's never responded to our request for how many
Oh,
Quinlys
man.
he has.
One day we'll know.
Nobody knows how many
No
Quinlys
one
he
knows.
has. Not even us.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all for sticking around, for joining us. Yeah, this is interesting. I'm really curious to see how people start building their Quinly print farms, because
Yeah.
now we're not going to be the only ones.
Yeah.
And
We've
we'll
just started,
probably-
but this is only the beginning.
Yeah,
We
we'll
want to see how the Quinlys spread.
self-replicating.
That's it.
That's the goal.
Self-replicating
One
Quinly
of
farm.
one of these updates, you'll wake up in the morning and there'll just be another printer.
Quinly will just become autonomous. and
Yeah, yeah.
Start printing itself.
Skynet slowly. Cool. Okay. Yes. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, because we'll be doing a lot, like all of our product announcements by live stream, and just by me mentioning that might be hinting at something coming up. The other thing is, if you like this video, it helps share these very valuable tips that we've spent over a year learning when setting up our 50 Ender 3 print farm. So if you haven't already, please do that. We're out of water, so we cannot incentivize you with drinking water. But sharing knowledge is also a great incentive, I think. Not as cool as drinking water, but it's up there.
We have a thirst for knowledge.
A thirst for knowledge, and we're all out of water.
Too bad.
Yeah, and what else? Join the Discord.
Yeah.
Point 3, you got to engage in the community. And I would
It's a great
highly
community.
suggest, even if you don't have a Quinly, just to see what people are doing with it and how people are using the automation is very, very interesting. So I would definitely suggest joining the Discord if you aren't in there already. Other than that, we'll see you next week at the same time.
Yes, with full water bottles.
With full water bottles, same place. Do we know if it'll be the same people yet?
I don't know if we know if it with the
I
same
don't
people.
think if we. I don't think
It might
we
not be
know.
the same people actually.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
But next stream will be a very interesting stream. Hint, hint. Nudge, nudge. Make sure to clear your
Mateo's got
calendar.
a secret.
Make sure to clear your calendar. The next stream is going to be very, very interesting. Are we going to let people know anything?
I mean, I think if people stuck around this long, they could have at least
A small
Thank
taste.
you.
Nugget
Yeah.
of wisdom.
maybe like a riddle or
A
something.
small riddle. I can't
Jack
think
is
of a
just
riddle.
so excited right now.
Jack's out of here.
Sewer water. He said sewer water in the chat.
Sewer water.
This
I
is
don't know what
really
to-
good water.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure what I can say. There will be an
Something.
announcement of a new product.
Oh.
That's what I will say.
Cool.
But beyond that, I will not say much.
Will it be 3D printing related?
It will be 3D printing related.
Oh, that's a big announcement.
That's a big announcement. And it has to do with the Ender 3 in
Oh.
part,
And also 3DQ the company.
and 3DQ, and potentially even another printer.
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe even a printer beyond that, maybe.
Whoa,
Maybe.
whoa.
We don't know. It's top secret still.
Top secret.
So,
It
yeah.
won't be a secret anymore.
Tune in for that one. That's going to be an exciting one.
Mateo spills his secrets.
I'll
Next
spill
stream.
the secrets. The beans will be everywhere. Spilled.
3D beans.
All right. We'll stop it here before it devolves any further. But we are going to be doing a cool demo
That's true.
of the new product that involves 3D printing. And this is actually a product that has been very highly requested for a long time. So it is actually an important product. Okay, that's all.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Clear your schedule.